All right, guys. So, real quick off the top here, just wanted to say a thank you to everybody who responded to my post yesterday. Obviously, my dog Leo had to be hospitalized. He got pretty sick. He's still a little bit banged up right now, but he is officially back home with me. He's laying at my feet as we speak. And so, again, thank you for all of the kind messages and everything. He's my best buddy, and so it means a lot. Now, with that being said, we got a lot to catch up on here. So, 2 days ago, on October 8th, Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, put out an insanely ominous message here that he called the message to the people of Lebanon, where in this 3.5 minute clip, he essentially threatens the civilian population in Lebanon with suffering like we've seen in Gaza if they don't basically start a civil war and try to topple Hezbollah. So let's go ahead and jump into this and see what he had to say here.
This is a message to the people of Lebanon. Do you remember when your country was called the Pearl of the Middle East? I do. So what happened to Lebanon? A gang of tyrants and terrorists destroyed it. That's what happened. Lebanon was once known for its tolerance, for its beauty. Today, it's a place of chaos, a place of war. Israel withdrew from Lebanon 25 years ago. But the country that actually conquered Lebanon is not Israel. It's Iran. Iran, which finances and arms Hezbollah to serve Iran's interests at Lebanon's expense. Hezbollah has turned Lebanon into a stockpile of ammunition and weapons and a forward Iranian military base. Just one day after the October 7th massacre a year ago, Hezbollah joined the war against Israel. It launched an unprovoked attack on our cities and on our citizens. It has since fired over 8,000 missiles at Israel, killing civilians without distinctions, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and Druze. Israel has decided to put an end to this. We've decided to do whatever is necessary to return our people safely to their homes. Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel also has a right to win, and Israel will win. We've degraded Hezbollah's capabilities. We took out thousands of terrorists, including Nasrallah himself, and Nasrallah's replacement, and the replacement of his replacement. Today, Hezbollah is weaker than it's been for many, many years. Now you, the Lebanese people, you stand at a significant crossroads. It is your choice. You can now take back your country. You can return it to a path of peace and prosperity. If you don't, Hezbollah will continue to try to fight Israel from densely populated areas at your expense. It doesn't care if Lebanon is dragged into a wider war. Christians, Druze, Muslims, Sunnis, and Shiites, all of you are suffering because of Hezbollah's futile war against Israel. Today I ask every mother and every father in Lebanon a simple question. Is it worth it? Because it doesn't have to be that way. I know you want a better future for your children. So I'm speaking to all of you today. There is a better way for your children, for your cities, for your villages, for your country. You deserve to restore Lebanon to its days of tranquility. You deserve a Lebanon that is different. One country, one flag, one people. Don't let these terrorists destroy your future any more than they've already done. Stand up and take your country back. You have an opportunity that hasn't existed in decades. An opportunity to take care of the future of your children and grandchildren. You have an opportunity to save Lebanon before it falls into the abyss of a long war that will lead to destruction and suffering like we see in Gaza. It doesn't have to be that way. Each of you can take a step for your future, even a small step. You can make a difference. I say to you, the people of Lebanon, free your country from Hezbollah so that this war can end. Free your country from Hezbollah so that your country could prosper again, so that future generations of Lebanese and Israeli children will know neither war nor bloodshed, but will finally live together in peace.
Okay, so a lot going on in that clip. It's hard to interpret that in any way other than a direct threat against the civilian population in Lebanon, that if you do not essentially take up arms or somehow magically remove Hezbollah from power, then we are going to do to you what we've done to the people of Gaza. Do we need to remind ourselves of what Israel has done in Gaza? They have destroyed a majority of the standing structures. Majority of the buildings in Gaza have been destroyed. They've attacked schools, mosques, churches, refugee camps, UN shelters, aid workers, journalists, farmland, water infrastructure. Gaza has been utterly decimated over the last year of this genocide. And so, I mean, he's unequivocally here threatening Lebanon with a genocide the likes of which we've seen in Gaza over the last year. Unless they somehow remove Hezbollah from being a prominent force in Lebanese politics. That's what he's saying here, guys. Now, we also have some updates here. in terms of what this actually looks like, because although he made this threat a couple of days ago, they've already been engaging in some of the same exact actions in Lebanon as we've seen in Gaza. So these are just some of the images that I've seen floating across my timeline here. This is in Yarun, which is pointed out here by Mikhail. He says this used to be a small, lively town with a mixed Shia Muslim and Greek Catholic population, a land of emigration. Many of its people settled in Bell, California. After a year of Israeli bombardments, this is what remains of it. So this is in southern Lebanon. You can see just the absolute destruction of essentially everything that's within sight here. I've seen plenty of other places, especially in southern Lebanon, that look exactly like this. It seems like it's basically part of the IDF strategy to just go in and flatten a place to the ground before the IDF actually goes into that place, so that the IDF doesn't have to fight a real, sort of urban combat battle with Hezbollah or with Hamas in Gaza. Now, we also have some videos, again, of something that should seem familiar to anybody who's been paying attention to what's been happening in Gaza. Here we have Israeli soldiers proudly, publicly filming themselves just destroying people's homes. This is in Maron al-Ras, with soldiers celebrating in the background as you can see this entire area over here by this home exploding. Now, in a couple of days, I'm going to have a video out where I'm covering this new documentary that was put out by Al Jazeera, where they compiled a bunch of different videos of IDF soldiers openly, proudly celebrating and posting their war crimes online for everybody to see. So we'll be covering, further examples of this, but just wanted to let you guys know that this is not something that is confined to Gaza. It's not something that is confined to, being directed at the Palestinian population. This is now the same exact shit that we are seeing in Lebanon as well. Now, we also have further examples of the destruction of civilian infrastructure. Here we have a fire station in southern Lebanon. 10 firefighters were killed as they prepared for rescue operations. This is the before image of what this fire station looked like, and this is what it looks like now. And I think it's also a good point here by Jason to say that in Lebanon, Israel is not even bothering to invent excuses for bombing hospitals and fire stations. There is no attempt to fabricate claims about command and control centers like with what we saw with Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza. They're just openly destroying civilian infrastructure on a massive scale. And I think he's right because, I've seen other examples of strikes like this in Lebanon now, and it's like, they don't even really bother to do the propaganda anymore. I mean, if they're questioned about it, they'll say, oh, I'm sure there was this was a Hezbollah command center inside of this fire station with no evidence whatsoever. But I mean, it's almost like they don't even bother to make those kinds of claims anymore. They just do it, right? Now, we continue here because we also have an update on an interesting story that I don't think I've touched on this channel yet, but I've been tracking it over the last few days. So essentially you have Irish peacekeepers that have been in Lebanon years and years and years and years on. And as Israel is invading Lebanon, they have come into contact with these Irish peacekeepers who work for the United Nations. And now we have the UN saying that Israeli troops have opened fire at 3 positions held by UN peacekeepers in southern Lebanon. Earlier this week, the UNIFIL force refused a request from the Israeli military to vacate bases near the border. So they are trying to forcefully, evacuate or force out UN peacekeepers who are in southern Lebanon for a pretty obvious purpose there, right? To try to keep the peace. They're threatening them and then following through on those threats when they refuse to leave. Now they're openly firing at UN peacekeepers. Now, we also have this here. In terms of the political angle here, we have Donald Trump, who apparently recently called Benjamin Netanyahu last week to congratulate him on invading Lebanon. He said, Netanyahu's office added that Trump called Netanyahu on his own initiative. And also participating in the call was, of course, Lindsey Graham. Who else would you expect? So, on the one hand, we have Trump calling on his own volition Benjamin Netanyahu to congratulate him on invading Lebanon. Fantastic anti-war candidate that you have there, as some people try to say about Trump. And on the other hand, you have the Biden administration. reported here by John Hudson for the Washington Post, saying that the Biden admin is no longer supporting an immediate ceasefire in Lebanon, according to Matthew Miller. He says, yes, we do support Israel launching these incursions to degrade Hezbollah's infrastructure. Now, important to keep in mind here that when he says Hezbollah's infrastructure, he means whatever Israel says is Hezbollah's infrastructure, and what Israel means is everything in Lebanon. That's what they mean when they say Hezbollah's infrastructure. In the same way that in Gaza, when they say this is Hamas infrastructure, they mean everything. That's what they mean, right? So the Biden administration is not even pretending at this point anymore to support a ceasefire, right? So this is not just like an Israeli invasion of Lebanon and an escalation with Iran and an ongoing genocide in Gaza that the U.S. is upset about. That's not what it is. This is a joint operation here that we're witnessing. It is a U.S.-Israeli genocide in Gaza. It is a U.S.-Israeli invasion of Lebanon. It is a U.S.-Israeli escalation with Iran. Because none of this could or would be happening if Biden was willing to use leverage over Israel to stop this, right? This is happening with U.S. weapons, with U.S. support, with U.S. cover on the international stage. That is the only reason why this is allowed to happen. So it's a joint operation. It's not something that's happening, because, Biden can't do anything about it. Now, speaking of that, we have, I think this might be article number, 5,783 of reports from behind the scenes where Joe Biden is apparently furious with Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, this is a great one here, guys. Here's the quote. And this is about a book that Bob Woodward is writing. I don't know if it's officially released yet, but this is an excerpt from Bob Woodward's book. Now, the quote is, "He's a fucking liar," Biden said privately of Netanyahu after Israel went into Rafah. So we're talking about months ago, he said this apparently. He said, Benjamin Netanyahu is a fucking liar. He also said, Bibi, what the fuck? Yelling at Netanyahu back in July after an Israeli airstrike killed a top Hezbollah military commander and 3 civilians in Beirut, according to Woodward. He also said, the perception of Israel around the world is increasingly that you are a rogue state and a rogue actor. So he's a fucking liar, and Israel is a rogue state. Two things that I've been saying to you guys for months at this point, right? Many other people have as well. This is a confirmation that Joe Biden is not stupid, right? He's not being led blindly. He knows exactly who and what Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel are, right? He knows that Benjamin Netanyahu is lying to him and thereby lying to the rest of the world, lying to the American people. He knows that full well. And he also knows that the consequences of Israel's actions right now is that they are viewed as a rogue state by a vast majority of the rest of the international community. So he knows both of those things, right? And he chooses to do what? To continue standing by, right? He chooses to stand next to Benjamin Netanyahu and full-throatedly support every fucking thing that he is doing. He chooses to continue sending him billions and billions of dollars in weaponry. So, we get these reports on and on and on and on about how Biden is furious with Benjamin Netanyahu behind the scenes. And yet his policy doesn't change at all. According to Biden's own admitted statements here, he is arming and funding a lying rogue state. That's what he's doing here. So again, it's not as if Biden believes genuinely that what Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu are doing is right. Clearly he doesn't. Clearly he doesn't think that Netanyahu is an honest, good faith person. But he's continuing to maintain the same policy, right? He is a committed Zionist, in his own words. He would never abandon Israel, or not even just not abandon them, but he would never even think about using leverage over them, which is crazy to me because we've had other presidents use leverage over Israel. We've had other presidents who have been furious, publicly furious with Israel. We've talked about Ronald Reagan. We've talked about George W. Bush and their reactions to Israel going overboard, if you will. Joe Biden is the most aggressively loyal, president that Israel could have possibly ever asked for, right? He is the most dedicated Zionist president in probably the modern history of the United States, possibly for the entire history of Israel's existence. I mean, that's how extreme his position is on this. And at the same time, we have Kamala Harris, when she could have broken from the Biden administration, she could have changed policy on this for what she wants to do if she wins in 2024. Instead, she's choosing to do exactly what Biden is doing. And by the way, it's not even as if like, oh, well, Biden has to do this because this is what's politically necessary. No, it's not. This is extremely politically unpopular. So he's wrong on a moral front. He's wrong on a legal front in terms of the weapons that we're sending him being totally illegal under U.S. and international law. But he's also wrong on a political front, right? Because continuing to arm and fund Israel's genocide in Gaza or an escalation to a regional war with Iran, those are two extremely unpopular policies, right? That could actually be so unpopular that it costs Kamala Harris the election, right? So it doesn't even make sense politically that he would continue doing this. He knows that Benjamin Netanyahu wants Trump to win. What are you doing? What are you doing? I mean, what is it at the most fundamental level that makes Biden refuse to use any leverage whatsoever in order to stop all of this? Now, we also have some further images and information coming out of Gaza at the same time, as again, there looks to be no ceasefire in sight and doesn't even look like the United States is trying for a ceasefire at this point. But we have here, as posted by the Quds News Network, that Israeli occupation forces opened fire on civil defense teams while they were attempting to extinguish a fire that broke out due to Israeli airstrikes targeting tents of displaced civilians at a hospital in Jabalia. And this is also coming at the same time as Israel is basically doing a mass ethnic cleansing of the north of Gaza. We'll get to more of that here in a second. We also have this here that the Israeli occupation aircraft targeted the only operating bakery in northern Gaza by striking its flour warehouse in Jabalia, further enforcing the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in the north. Now, in terms of what has happened over the last year, we have an updated graphic here from a few days ago from Euromed Human Rights Monitor. So just some of the top line numbers, right? We're over a year now into this genocide. 10% of the population is either killed, injured, missing, or detained. Their number is about 50,292 who have been killed. That includes 45,155 civilians, as well as over 16,000 children and 10,000, nearly 500 women. And this number, obviously, I think is possibly a significant undercount. But they say the Gaza Strip, more than 2.2 million people live in the Gaza Strip. It's about 365 square kilometers, divided into 5 main governorates, and those are listed here. And a huge bulk of the population has been pushed from the north all the way down here into Rafah and then in Mawasi, which is this area of land that is around the size of an airport that hundreds of thousands of people have been stuffed into around here. They also say that 33% of the casualties have been children, 21% have been women, 9 out of every 10 people killed are civilians, 90% civilian kill rate. Getting closer to 200 journalists who have been killed. Their number right now is at 172. There have been several that have been killed just over the last couple of days. 83 civil defense workers have been killed. 97% of the per capita share of water has decreased due to damage to the water infrastructure in Gaza. 96% of the population faces high levels of acute food insecurity. They say 60% of organized international humanitarian missions to North Gaza have been prevented or obstructed by Israeli authorities. They say 6 indicators Israel failed to comply with their ICJ ruling, the International Court of Justice that has a genocide case against Israel. 6 different reasons how they failed to comply with these rulings. Number 1, the mass killing of civilians. Number 2, causing serious physical and mental harm. Number 3, imposing inhuman living conditions. Number 4, using starvation as a weapon. Number 5, imposing an environment meant to prevent childbirth. And number 6, public incitement to genocide. They have a list here as well of the buildings that have been destroyed, where over 500,000 housing units have been destroyed. I mean, the entire population of Gaza, men, women, children, everything put together is just over 2 million. So 500,000 housing units have been destroyed. 489 schools have been destroyed or damaged. Almost 3,000 industrial facilities. 814 mosques. 814 mosques have been attacked. 3 churches, 203 heritage sites, and 182 press headquarters. There have been 2,200 healthcare professionals that have been killed. 90% of the population has been forcibly displaced. You can see here a little graphical representation of where the population centers have moved. The gray here is the population pre-October 2023, and the yellow is the population post-October 2023. So this graphic is just from a few days ago. They have the number in North Gaza and Gaza City. It seems like collectively at pretty much exactly 500,000, keeping in mind that Israel right now is again beginning a total ethnic cleansing of the northern portion of Gaza by force, right? They're essentially saying everybody needs to get out of North Gaza, regardless of whether or not you even can do that, regardless of whether or not you're going to be killed on the way as you're trying to evacuate. But anybody who remains, they're going to treat as a Hamas militant, right? So a total ethnic cleansing of the north is happening right now. This graphic says there's about 500,000 people that are still there. 1 million people have been pushed into Deir al-Balah, as well as 700,000 more in Khan Yunis, and Rafah has been essentially emptied out since the Israeli invasion there. That, as a reminder, Joe Biden said was one of his red lines. We also have 3,600 detainees, hostages, if you will, who have been forcibly disappeared. And of course, we have shown the extensive reporting on them being brutally tortured in a myriad of different ways, including sexual assault, rape, electric shocks, spitting and urinating on detainees, strip searches, and willful killing under torture. Finally, they say that 89% of the hospitals have been destroyed or damaged, 70% of the buildings have been destroyed or damaged, and 80% of the schools and universities have been destroyed or damaged. Now, I'll leave this down in the description. It'll be the last link if you guys want to go and check out this article here that was also posted by Euromed Human Rights Monitor on, further info on the Israeli ethnic cleansing of North Gaza right now. They discuss how, there are still tens and tens of thousands of people who remain there, many of whom can't leave even if they wanted to. They talk about how they have been evacuating hospitals, forcibly evacuating hospitals and attacking healthcare workers there as well. And they get into a lot of pretty brutal and horrific details in terms of the current Israeli offensive in North Gaza. Now, again, keep in mind, 85%, as they point out in this article, of the buildings in North Gaza were already destroyed, like within the first couple of months after October 7th. So you've destroyed 85% of the buildings, right? And now you're saying a year into this, well, we need to do a complete ethnic cleansing of the North, because apparently destroying 85% of the buildings wasn't enough, right? We have to destroy the remaining 15% of the buildings that still stand, right? As if this is some sort of a targeted operation against Hamas. By the time that they're done with this operation, there are going to be no buildings standing in the northern portion of Gaza. And they want you to believe that this is a targeted operation against Hamas. Who believes that at this point? Genuinely, who believes it? So there you go, guys. There are your latest updates. I'm sure I'm going to have much more over the next couple of days as we continue to try to stay on this. We have Benjamin Netanyahu threatening to essentially do a genocide of the people of Lebanon, akin to what he has done in Gaza. We have Biden completely giving up on any sort of prospects of fighting for a ceasefire either in Gaza or in Lebanon. We have Trump calling and congratulating war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu on his invasion of Lebanon, and we continue to spiral towards a potential broader regional war with Iran that you can bet your ass the United States would get ourselves directly involved in if it continues to escalate. And unfortunately, escalation is exactly what Israel wants right now.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me. Everyone is saying